this out. Holy moly. Incredible. So I'm back in Delano, back in 2004, Delano, California, where we had a what we call an inter-facility transfer of an OBGYN patient. This young Filipina female was pregnant for the first time, and she was only 23 weeks along. The typical full-term pregnancy is 40 weeks, thereabout. And she was already having contractions. Obviously, can't have the baby, or don't want to have the baby at 23 weeks. Paul was my partner, and we got woke up at probably 2:30 in the morning, or somewhere Odor 30 again. And we head on over to the hospital, to the OB department, and we meet our patient, who's comfortable laying in bed. She's got an IV established. She's got a drip with a pump attached. And she's waiting for us to transfer her up to a hospital up north about an hour and drop her off basically at a higher level of care. I go to the nurse and I get a turnover as far as, who, what, where. And there's a protocol on the wall, I notice, for premature contractions. And it had a mag sulfate drip, etc. From the bed onto our gurney, and we wheeled her out to the ambulance and on our way. So we get on the freeway, Interstate 99 going northbound. And again, we've got about an hour drive. So I'm sitting there on the bench seat right next to her, looking down on her. And about 30 minutes or less into the transport, I was doing paperwork, and all of a sudden the Filipina girl wakes up and she says, "I think it's coming out." And I look at her and she's in tears and it's got that fear of God in her eyes. And I asked her, "It's coming out?" She said, "Yes, it's coming out." And I thought, okay, ma'am, I gotta take a look. All right, I gotta pull down the sheets. I said, "Open your legs." I sit her up. She puts her knees up, and I look down between her legs, and she's starting to deliver. I told Paul, and he looked in the rearview mirror. I looked up at him, and I said, "Pull over. I need your help." He's like, "I got it." So right there in the middle of I-99, somewhere in the middle of I-99, 30 minutes north of Delano, he pulls over onto the shoulder. He gets on the radio, lets the dispatch know what mile marker we are at. So he gets out, comes running back to the back of the ambulance, opens the double doors, gets in the back with me. He sits at the head, what they call the jump seat. I said, "Paul, I'm delivering it right now." And I said, "Give me some chucks." It's an absorbent pad with plastic bottom. He gives me a chuck out of the cabinet. I put it down on the bench seat. I deliver this. I can't believe I'm recalling it, but it's this infant, this fetus, is what I'm going to call it. And I'm telling you, this baby is see-through. Its arms are about as thick as my thumb, little hands on the end of it. I could see into its arm. I could see the veins and the vessels. Its chest was almost translucent. I could see the ribs through the tissue. I could see the diaphragm contracting. The chest was concave every time it took a breath. It was what we call doing the guppy. It was breathing like a fish out of water. I could see its heart beating through its chest. After I delivered it, God love Paul. He knew his BLS. I always encouraged him to go to paramedic school. He didn't have to ask him to do anything. He was right on it. I didn't have to worry about what he was doing. I look over at him. He's clamping the cord, massaging the patient's fundus, or that's the lower abdomen or the suprapubic area above the pubis area. What that does is encourage her to deliver the placenta in one piece on the umbilical cord. So he's over there massaging the fundus. He's trying to calm her down. She's in tears. She's not bleeding. Amniotic fluid, at least, all over the gurney and ambulance floor. And I've got this wet, translucent fetus on my bench seat. I immediately know that I need to intubate. I reach into my intubation kit and I pull out the smallest ET tube. ET tubes less diameter than my pinky. Matter of fact, it's probably 3 times as small as my pinky. It's like a sipping straw. I just held it there with my fingers right at the lip and put my other 3 fingers around its head and just held it there and asked Paul to help me wrap it up. We got it wrapped up in a dry chuck and another blanket. And I just sat there and attached a little pediatric ambu bag and oxygen attached to that and just ventilated this baby. And Paul took care of mom. He delivered the placenta and put the placenta in a plastic bag. He got a set of vital signs for me, wrapped up the patient nice and warm, and that was about it. He got back up front to continue the drive. I said, Paul, how much farther till we get to the hospital? We both figured it was 30 plus minutes till we got there. So I said, find me the closest hospital. I said, let's divert there and go from there. He said, got it. So we got on the radio, asked him where the closest hospital was. We only need 5 minutes from this hospital. So the next exit, Paul exited I-99, got to this hospital, and of course the hospital was basically sleeping. I think we were the only person in there. And of course it was a surprise because I had no time to make a radio contact with this hospital. It was an elderly nurse, and she's like, oh my. I said, yeah, I'm sorry about this, but we kind of got an emergency here. I said, if you could get the doc. She's like, oh sure, let me go wake him up. So he was asleep in the back. So she wakes him up and he comes out, and the nurse unwraps it, dries it off some more, puts some EKG pads on this little itty-bitty fetus. So we just continued to ventilate, and the doc came out and saw what we had, and I just told him what happened and that he was the closest, and I wanted to come here first before going any further. And basically the consensus was, well, we're not set up to take care of a baby like this. And he asked me, where you guys headed? And I told him, Fresno. And so we discussed air transport, and Doc and I both agreed that a helicopter transfer would take 30 minutes for it to get to the hospital. We're talking 45 minutes to an hour. By the time they land the helicopter, they get out, they come into the hospital, they do their assessment, they get it all packaged up, they get it all hooked up the way they want it hooked up and ready for flight, and then get back on the helicopter and fly off and land at the hospital. It's, we're looking at an hour or more from this community hospital. So I said, you know what, I can get there in 30 minutes. So let's just go. And Doc said, good luck. I said, thanks. And back on the road, Paul and I went. Could we have done that, made all those decisions? Of course I could have, but I didn't. And that's the way it went. So we get back on the road, and Doc contacted them at that community hospital before we left. So they're already expecting our arrival. We get there, the whole pediatric ICU team, resus team was awaiting us, along with the doc. We transferred the patient over and they took care of it. And that was the last I saw of this child and the mom. The next day, I did get a phone call from the receiving doc, and he just wanted to give me a follow-up. He did let me know that they did terminate efforts. Yeah, so the baby was lost, and yeah, that was the end of that crazy call. So there you have it. Guys, always a pleasure. As you were. See ya.